Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Whitetail Rendezvous is pleased to announce a partnership with GoHunt.com. Who's GoHunt.com? Well, if you're a DIY hunter, you need the information at GoHunt.com/insider. Why? Because it provides 4,200 profiles, every unit, every species, and every season. Furthermore, they give in-depth analysis, interactive maps, unit access, and seasonal trends. Draw odds are very important, and they give you the most accurate information in the business. All this is available when you go to GoHunt.com/insider. Make sure you use promo code WR when you join Insider. You'll get a $50 gift card for GoHunt.com Gear Shop. Remember, when you become a member of GoHunt.com/insider, you're going to get a $50 gift card to Go Hunt Gear Shop. What's in the gear shop? The best gear that you can buy for hunting the West. All in all, if you're hunting out West in 2018, GoHunt.com/insider is where you need to be to get all the research information. When you use promo code WR, Whitetail Rendezvous receives a small commission from GoHunt.com. Hey, folks, we got a new sponsor. It's called Buckwild Coffee. What's so special about Buckwild Coffee? Well, a gazillion people go to Starbucks every day and drink coffee. Well, why shouldn't Buckwild Coffee offer you light, medium, or dark roast with free shipping? All you have to do is go to whitetailrendezvous.com, go to shop, and order your coffee, and I'll ship it out for free. Hey, thanks so much for visiting Buckwild Coffee. The best brew in the West, the best brew around the campfire, the best brew in the hunting shack, the best brew anywhere. Buckwild Coffee. Get yours today. Hey, folks, welcome to a special edition of Whitetail Rendezvous. Yeah, all our editions are special, but what we're doing with Realtree and Josh Honeycutt, he is the deer hunting manager. And what does that mean? He takes care of all the digital. You go to the website and look up deer hunting, and there's Josh. And he's handling all that for Realtree. So Josh and I have come together, and once a month we're going to kind of go over what they're putting out, what they're seeing on a monthly basis. And this session, we're going to talk about prepping for the season. That's wide open. That's a lot of things. And the second part of the show, we're going to talk about land management. So Josh, let's just start right off with, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what you're telling people about pre-season prepping.
Yeah, this is a good time of year. Turkey season's starting to wind down. I'm actually finishing up. I've got 3 more episodes of our digital turkey series, The Reason for the Hunt, that we put out. We've got 3 more episodes of that to release this month, and then we'll be full bore into deer season. But, it's a time of year whenever everybody's really starting to transition off of turkey season. They're starting to think more about land management, starting to think more about getting out there and getting ready for deer season. There's a lot of things that we're doing right now. We haven't actually started putting out mineral yet here, at least not in Kentucky. Some states can, but we can't put mineral out until May 31st. You can't feed wildlife from I think it's March 1st to May 31st. So we haven't really started putting mineral out for deer yet. We haven't put any kind of bait out for deer. I have not put my cameras back out yet. Once June 1st hits, usually that first week of June, that's when I put my mineral out. That's when I put my cameras back out. But right now I have been pretty heavy on planting spring food plots, planting early season food plots for early bow season that we'll kind of focus on during September and October. So early season food plots is a big topic right now because everybody's planting those. If you want to plant fall food plots, obviously we're going to wait till August or September to plant those. But depending on where you're at in the country. But yeah, it's a time of year where it's not quite full bore in preseason mode for most people, but we're definitely right on the cusp of that preseason work busting loose.
Now, when you're saying you're putting some, summer crops, what are you putting in?
Well, mostly what we plant for early season and at least hear what I prefer, and it's just all personal preference. I love for an early season food plot. See, I'm in an area where it's a good mix of timber, ag, a little bit of cattle pasture. There's a lot of food. We're lucky where I'm at. There's already quite a bit of food sources available to deer. So really, when it comes to me, I don't plant big food plots. I don't plant food plots that are specifically, because there's different types of food plots. You got a kill plot and you got a food plot. Kill plots are designed to put that deer in a position where you can fill a tag on that deer. A food plot is primary purpose is to feed the herd. So I don't actually plant any big scale 5, 10, 15, 20 acre food plots because I don't need to. We already have plenty of good early season, mid season, and late season food sources for the most part. Most places that I hunt here we're in South Central Kentucky, we're blessed that way. So you can still put those late season. If you were going to put in an actual food plot to feed the herd, I would make sure it's a late season food plot around here, where if you already have good quality food sources during the early parts of the year, like ag, because you're going to get more use out of that. But for what I've done personally, I've planted just small half acre, 3/4 acre, quarter acre food plots, or not food plots, but kill plots. And what I've planted, it's really all about giving the deer something different. It's really not as much about what I'm planting, but the location that I'm planting them. I want to make sure that these kill plots are in staging areas that are directly in the line of travel that deer is naturally going to take anyway, from their bedding area to their feeding destination. And I'm having to keep in mind what their actual food sources are going to be at the time that I want to hunt over these kill plots. So what I've personally planted is my goal, and what to plant is to give them something different that they can't get somewhere else, that they don't already have access to in the general area. And for me, that's cow peas. Excuse me. I like to plant cow peas, iron clay peas. Those are really good early season food sources, and nobody else really plants them. It's pretty non-existent. Something else I like to plant is sunflowers. I like to plant sunflowers as well. It's a really good early season food plot. And there's other options out there too. You can go the clover route. You can go lots of different directions. You can go lab. Lab is really not a good option. But I don't traditionally plant what a lot of people like to plant, soybeans and corn in their food plots. And depending on your personal situation, that may be perfect. That may be great. But for me, that's not, because I'm already surrounded by soybeans and corn crops. So I don't want to give them something they already have access to. I want to give them something different, and that's been my goal so far the last few weeks. Since I've started planting or finishing up I just finished up planting my summer and early season food plots.
So when you open up a new kill plot, because like a lot of us, based on what you've seen, based on what the deer movement is for the winter, you might move your tree stand. If you move the tree stand, then you're going to move, your food plot. So how do you open up a new, what I call also kill plots?
Well, I mean, again, it just kind of goes back to if I'm trying to, and I did the same thing this year. I actually planted I've been blessed because I've hunted the same properties for several years now, so I haven't really had to do much changing the last couple of years, the last few years, the last 4 or 5 years, really. It's been more fine tuning than it has been big changes, because I've been able to hunt these properties that I've been hunting here at home for quite some time. But I did decide to put in a new one this year. That was one big change that I made, and the main thing is always when you're putting in a kill plot, you're not just remember, you're not trying to feed the deer. You're just trying to put those deer in position to kill that deer. If you have a particular buck that you've been after for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and you're like, how do I kill that deer? Well, if you know where he's bedding at and you know where he's feeding at, try to position that kill plot directly between his bedding area and his feeding destination. And that's going to be a really good way to try to kill that deer earlier in the year, all the way up to say mid to late October. Here in Kentucky, we open up the very beginning of September. It changes a little bit, but it's always the first full weekend in September. So we have a really good window to use food to our advantage. Food is king year round, but we're blessed because we can hunt them early enough in the year that they're still on those pretty consistent and somewhat daytime oriented bed to feed patterns of an afternoon. But really, again, it goes back to make sure when you position those kill plots, when you open up a new one or trying to find a place to put one, don't try, don't don't go into it with the mentality of I'm going to draw that deer into me. Go into it with the mentality of I'm going to get in that deer's way, because that's really what you got to keep in mind. Because the research shows and personal experience for me shows that if you go into that mentality and with oh I'm going to pull that deer over here or oh I'm going to pull that deer over there, you might do that and you may be 100% successful trying that. But I've had much better luck whenever I went into it with that mentality of oh I'm going to take what I know about where that deer is bedding at. I'm going to take what I know about where he's feeding at, and then I'm going to decide where to put my food, my kill plot based on that. And I've had much more luck with daylight activity because of that. And in fact, the last 3 years here in Kentucky, I've killed my buck out of the exact same tree stand, out of the exact same kill plot on the exact same farm. I hunt 4 different farms here at home, and I've one of those kill plots that I've been planting for the last 4 or 5 years now has become so effective at what I've designed it to do. The deer just funnel through there like crazy, and I give up hunting some bigger deer that I know about on other places or on another part of that particular farm. And it's not a big farm; it's only probably 30, 40, 50 acres. I don't know the exact acreage. It's probably I would say 50, 40 to 50, maybe 30. I don't know, but it's a small property in relative terms of private land. But I've give up hunting some bigger deer that were less huntable because of good deer that I was after on that particular property that had become so huntable because I had positioned that kill plot in that spot. And until I put that kill plot in that spot, I had never killed a deer on that part of that farm.
So you put the kill plot in now ish, May, June. That's what I'm thinking, right?
I'm sorry, what's that?
May, June. You put the kill plot in May, June. You go in there with some herbicide, knock it down, rake it up, maybe burn it. You put fertilizer, lime, and seed down, and that's it. Or,
Yeah, I mean,
how does that all work?
I'm not too. I don't get too scientific with it. I mean, you can get as scientific as you want, but really the basic things and the primary things to remember is go in there, make sure you kill all the foliage that's existing before you go in and plant. Take a soil test. I'll be honest with you, I don't take a soil test every single time I do a food plot or a kill plot. I'd be lying if I said I did, but it is good to do that. Take a soil test. And then that way you know how much fertilizer lime you need to apply. If you don't go the soil test route, generally speaking, the best way to go about it, and again, it is better to do a soil test, but if you don't, just get triple 13 fertilized, put triple 13 fertilized down, the right amount that it calls for per acreage, and then and if you think it needs it, maybe apply a little lime, but that's really all that you absolutely that's the base minimum really if you don't go the soil test route. Um, the order of events that I prefer to do it, I like to go in there about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks beforehand, probably closer to 2 weeks beforehand. Depends on my schedule and weather as well, but about 2 weeks is usually pretty good. Before the general time frame that you want to plant, go in there, spray and kill it, and then after that, come in. I like to fertilize and then disc. I disc that fertilizer into the soil, into the ground, and then I'll come back in there and plant. Depending on what I'll plant, I will either cold pack it if I have access to that. I don't always have access to that. Sometimes I'm using very small implements. I've put in kill plots with rototillers or just garden tillers. So I haven't always had. I don't always have access to tractor. Now I'm lucky that sometimes in some spots I'm able to borrow the equipment. I don't personally own it. I'm either able to rent the equipment or borrow the equipment from someone to put those plots in. But yeah, like I guess it really depends on what you're planning. Sometimes you might want to put that seed a quarter inch deep. Sometimes you want to put it in an inch deep. So it varies depending on what you're planting. So whether you pack that seed or you disc that seed in, or you simply run over it with a four-wheeler to make sure it has good seed to soil contact, it will depend very based on what you're actually going to be planning.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing that I've seen in the places that we're doing it. We got a little Honda, garden rototiller,
Mm-hmm.
because you really can't get gear in there. It's just not going to get in
And
there.
And that's the thing. Most of the time, in most cases, whenever you find a good spot for a kill plot that's going to put that deer, and the goal of that is to put a deer in that spot in daylight. And I will say this, generally, whenever I have a good solid kill plot in place, that kill plot is going to be inside of 100 yards from where that deer is bedding at. It has to be close, especially if you're dealing with a deer that is somewhat nocturnal or is not moving very far in daylight. That kill plot, that open area that you're trying to kill that deer and get him there so you can get an arrow or a bullet in him. I usually, if I know where the deer is bedding at, or I know where that general bedding area is, that there's a high likelihood or high probability of a deer using it, I usually place those within 100 yards. I definitely don't want to go over 150. And that's really too far in most cases, in my opinion. Now, it might not be too far for someone else. If they know their property and they know how much, the daylight usage on someone else's property may be much better. But I'm in a fairly pressured area. Luckily, that there's not a ton of early season bow hunters that get out there, but there's a lot of gun hunters out there. And once gun season comes in, it's really, really, really pressured. And it is pressured during bow season too. But I generally put my kill plots within 100 yards, sometimes closer, sometimes 80, 75 yards of those bedding areas. And to your point, most of the time, whenever you do that, you're going to be back in the thick stuff. You're going to be back in an area where it's hard to get a tractor or even tractor implements for that matter. So, like you said, a lot of the times when we put one of these plots in, we're going in there with a garden tiller and tilling it up by hand, so to speak, and not using big implements like that. Luckily now, and I don't actually have one, I'm still using in those really, really tight spots. Now, I do some of my kill plots, I have road beds cut to them that I'm able to get tractors back in there, and I'm able to either borrow a tractor from the landowner or a neighbor or whatever, or rent it from someone nearby. And I'm still able to plant some of mine with tractor and tractor implements. But luckily today, again, some people have ATVs. They have some decent implements that can be hauled and towed behind an ATV to do that. But I'm still using, personally, I still use a garden tiller to get into those really, really, really tight spots. It's tough to till up a quarter acre, half acre doing that. So generally, whenever it comes to that, I'm usually doing an eighth acre plot or a quarter acre plot at the most. Generally, not that big. Usually closer to an eighth, sometimes even a 16th, if I think that it won't get overgrazed by deer. But it can be tough. But I mean, like I said, when it comes to killing big deer and just killing deer in general, and it doesn't have to be big deer. Killing a doe can be just as hard, especially if it's an old doe. Killing a doe with your bow can be almost as hard, especially if she's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they do get that old and much older. In fact, I'll come back to that in a minute. But killing a really old doe can be just as hard as killing a 2 or 3 year old buck sometimes. So it doesn't have to be just big deer, but deer in general. You only get out of it what you put into it. So if you're willing to go that extra mile and put in that hard work, even if it takes you a whole weekend or a whole Saturday or a whole weekend to put in that kill plot, you're going to be glad you did come October and November when it's setting over a big deer.
Yeah, and the thing that I found, my experience, you don't want to set the kill plot in view of the food source, because that to me is more of a staging area that the buck's coming in, he's checking the field, he's doing all those things, and so he's alert. If you get it back where Josh was talking about, you might be 100, 200 yards, and the distance could be closer than that because some heavy bedding and they don't have to walk 200 yards, and they're feeding on beans or corn or whatever. So you got to play your land, and that's the biggest thing that I try to tell people. They say, well, how do I do this, or where do I do this on my land? I say, you got to look at your land. You got to really know where the deer are bedded habitually. You know where the does are, but the bucks, typically aren't in the same place. And so you got to figure all that out. And see, that's the thing that hunting, is intriguing, because you figured out you've got a hot spot now that you created. You figured out they're coming through. They sort of are used to the place. They take a bite, they pause, and that's all you need.
Yeah, and again, like you said, once you get it figured out, you'll know it because, like I said, I've been very, very fortunate, very blessed. For the last 3 years, my Kentucky buck has come. Well, I take that back. It's not all been out of the same tree stand because I actually do have two different tree stands on this one little small kill plot for two different wind directions. And so I've actually two of those bucks have been killed out of the same stand. One of them, the one I killed last year, was killed out of another stand, but they're only 20 yards apart. But I've been fortunate. Once you figure out the land, once you figure out how the deer use the land, and like you said, once you get that figured out, it just kind of clicks. And I may hamstring myself and jinx myself, and not a deer walks through that kill plot this fall. Who knows? But generally, once you do get that figured out, and once things start clicking, you really can have some good opportunities, good shot opportunities at some deer. And it's kind of interesting. Short note here. Last fall, I was going into it with hoping that I was going to be hunting a big, big wide 8-pointer. He's probably 150 high, probably 150-inch 8, and he probably only has 4-inch bases. So he's just big frame deer, wide, tall, doesn't have a lot of mass. He's just big frame. And I was going into the season last fall in hopes of targeting that deer, and he didn't show up during the preseason like I thought he would, or even the first couple of days of the season. And instead of him being in there, there was a big mainframe 9-pointer with a big well, it wasn't actually a drop time, but his main beam turned and went down about 6-7 inches, 5-6-7 inches there at the end of the beam, and so I call it a drop time. But it was so I ended up hunting that deer instead. And right after I killed my deer, within less than a week, the big mainframe 8 showed up.
No.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, I was still tickled to death. I wouldn't have changed anything about it. And in fact, that character with that main beam turned down, I was probably more happy with that than I would have been just a big clean mainframe 8. But the point I'm trying to make with that is, as the season progresses and as the year progresses, when deer find those areas and they find those spots, if they like it, they may move there. They may relocate their home range, or they're not necessarily their home range, because their home range is a big encompassing area, generally 600 to 700 acres. But they may relocate their core area to that spot because they like that bedding area, and they like how they have that food source that's close to that bedding area, and they like how they can move on out into the bigger food source that's nearby. And I think that's what happened with this particular deer, because I had been hunting that big 8 on a different part of the farm. I had never even seen him on that part of the farm before, and I'm sure he knew about that kill plot in that area. I'm sure he knew about it already. But whenever I killed that deer, he moved in almost immediately afterward, and he stayed there all season long. Lots of daylight pictures. So I'm hoping that deer does the same thing this fall. But something to think about. You're not probably going to draw a ton of deer into those spots, because deer are not territorial in the traditional sense. They don't defend an area. A lot of people think that whitetails, and the reason I say this isn't my personal opinion, my personal experiences, they kind of confirm what I already thought based on the research that I've looked at from other biologists and other studies. But deer are not necessarily territorial in the traditional sense. They don't defend an area; they defend breeding rights. But it kind of makes it seem like they defend an area, even though they aren't. Because whenever a buck and two bucks get in a fight in September or October, and they're establishing that dominance, it's not that they're technically defending an area; they're just defending their status in the herd. But it kind of appears that way, that they're defending an area, because a lot of the times what you'll see is the vanquished buck, the less dominant buck, will end up relocating and trying to find and establish a core area somewhere where he is the boss. So just because you put in a kill plot doesn't mean you'll necessarily have a ton of deer just pour into that area. You may only have one mature buck, one dominant buck that uses that area, and then some other subdominant bucks that really young, 1.5 year, 2.5 year old deer that come in there. Now I'm talking once the deer start moving, they disperse to their summer pattern, or excuse me, their fall ranges, not necessarily their summer patterns when they're still in bachelor groups. That's a different story. But once they start breaking up in October, late September, and into October, that don't necessarily think that you'll have a ton of mature deer. 2 years ago, I killed my buck in that same spot, and there was only one mature buck in there, and that's the deer that I ended up killing. But it's just something to think about, and it's also why you might want to establish multiple bedding areas on the properties that you hunt. If you're trying to increase just the deer population numbers, and you're trying to increase the number of mature bucks you have on a given property, the best way to do that I've found, and this is again just my opinion, no science behind this, but my personal findings has been to establish multiple bedding areas, and you can do that very easily by going in and hinge cutting. Uh, you can go in and drag a whole bunch of down trees, that are already down, treetops from where it's been logged. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. That's just the easiest way without making big changes. You can go in and plant a bunch of native grasses. Deer love to bed, and there's many ways that you can create bedding cover. But without getting into all that, the best way I've found to increase the number of mature bucks on a given property is to go in there and increase the number of bedding areas that are available that are separate, not together, but separate, and then go in and establish a kill plot for each one of those bedding areas. Because if you can do that, you have a much higher odds of increasing the number of mature bucks that are on that given property. Even if it's a small property, I'm not saying that you have to do this on 200, 300, 500,000 acres. You can do this on 50 acres. You can do it on 75 or 100 acres. But whenever you increase the number of bedding areas that are maybe even just a few hundred yards apart, those deer are going to be more apt to, more big deer are going to be more apt to use your property and establish their core area on it.
How do you get into these, kill plots? That's one thing that, we established. Sometimes they're really in thick stuff, and you mentioned you've got some roads or trails, built into them. The thing that I've always looked at, the places that I have my kill plot set up, I mean, it's gnarly stuff. I mean, and I can't just ghost in there. I can't ninja in there. I wish I could, but I'm gonna make noise.
Right. Yeah, and it's really tough. I mean, an entry and exit, and that's something that I personally try to think about whenever there's a lot of things I'm thinking about whenever I establish a kill plot. And I'm coming right back to what you asked, but primary again is, where do I got to be to get in that deer's way? With that mentality, how do I get in his way? Second is, primary is knowing where he's bedding, where he's feeding. Then how do I get in his way? But then I'm also thinking about wind. I'm thinking about entry and exit routes, as you just mentioned. I'm thinking about a lot of different things. And entry and exit is huge, because and I would even argue in many instances, if not every instance, it's probably definitely in the top 3, top 2, maybe even the most important thing when it comes to a kill plot. Because if you can't get to your tree stand without spooking that deer, it doesn't matter how good a spot it is. If you can't get to your stand without bumping him, or her, if it's a doe, whatever it is, doe or buck, for that matter, it doesn't matter. But if you cannot get into that tree stand without bumping deer, it doesn't matter how good a spot, how pretty a spot it is. You're not going to kill them if you bump them before you get there. And it's the same way whenever you're leaving your stand. A lot of times people don't think about, it doesn't matter if I bump that deer whenever I leave my stand, whether it's in the morning or at night, after the hunt. It doesn't matter if it's mid-morning or lunchtime and you're coming out for the day, or if it's after dark and just after sunset and you're leaving for the day. If you're bumping deer on the way out, it's just as bad. It's not quite as bad as bumping them on the way into a stand. It's not as bad. Well, it depends on that. Bumping them in daylight, I think, is worse than bumping them at night under the cover of darkness. But so that obviously that would mean after the morning hunt, before the afternoon hunt. But yeah, that's something to think about. For me personally, if I don't think I can get into a particular stand without spooking deer, I won't put my kill plot there. If I don't think I have a good entry and exit route. And something that we've done and try to do, we don't always do it because it's a lot of hard work, because we plant numerous kill plots, and we don't always have the time because we got a lot of other stuff going on. And we're regular Joes too. I don't hunt for a living. I work on digital media and digital content job. But it's one of those things where we like to try to cut trails into our stands, two trails actually, an entry and an exit. And my entry routes to my tree stands and my exit routes away from my stands, not always, but most of the time are different. How I walk into a stand and how I walk out away from that stand are generally two different routes. Unless I have a really, really, really good entry and exit where it's like I'm walking in a drainage to that stand, or I'm walking down a creek bank with really steep sides on both sides where I can get in and out without deer seeing me. If that's the case, then I like to use that in and out. But if I don't have that, if I don't have a good visual barrier that conceals me, then a lot of times my way in and my way out is different because the deer are in different locations. Whenever say you're going in of a morning before a morning hunt, the deer are going to be still more than likely going to be back on the food still. So obviously you don't want to walk through the middle of the food early of a morning into as you work into that tree stand location or into that kill plot. You're going to want to come in the back door, and I wouldn't necessarily come in the bedding area either. I wouldn't walk through that bedding area by any means. But you got to think about that too, because if say you've got a big bean field here that you're hunting, that the deer are targeting, and your kill plot's here and the bedding area is here, you obviously don't want to walk through the bean field to get to your kill plot early of a morning, or you're usually going to blow deer out. You're going to put them off their normal patterns, and they may not follow their normal routes back into their bedding area. They kind of boogered the area up for a little while. Same way when you leave on a morning hunt, the deer are more than likely going to be back in the bedding area. The way I like to go is to back out toward the food, because 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock, whatever time you come out, around mid-morning or lunch, most of the time there's not going to be any deer out. So I like to head back. Now, I won't necessarily walk through the middle of the food, but I like to head back toward the food, obviously away from the bedding area. And that might mean that I have to do a long walk in or a long walk out or both, but it's definitely worth it when you don't spook deer, because if you spook deer, you can mess up your spot for the next week, the next month, or for the rest of the season. So it's definitely important knowing how to get in and out of that stand without being detected by deer. Definitely important, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and I hope folks you're taking notes on that, because it's a mistake that we all make. And I'm raising my hand because you get so used to of hitting the stand. The stand's been good to you, and just a couple of things change, and all of a sudden you're busting deer. And the farm that I hunt, I've had to park at the barn and not walk in. We used to be able to walk in or drive the truck or the ATV, halfway. Can't do that anymore because just the way the farmers get the field set up. Now we have to park at the barn, and it is it's a quarter-mile walk, to our stands. But when we do that, then I see more deer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
figure it out.
It's kind of interesting that you say that, because I've always went that route. That's been my personal opinion. I like to walk in. I don't like to drive four-wheelers anywhere near where I'm hunting. I don't like to drive trucks anywhere near where I'm hunting. Not that the deer necessarily pay attention to it, but I do think they do. I think they catch on quick. I think they're smarter than people give them credit for. But I do know I'm not a big outfitter hunter. I've been fortunate, blessed to hunt with a few outfitters, two or three outfitters for whitetails. But 99.99% of my hunting is done DIY, and that's the way I like it. Nothing against outfitters, but I just prefer to do all the work myself. I get more out of it because it's not about the kill for me; it's about the process. But it's interesting, as you mentioned that, because every outfitter I've been to, they like to drive a four-wheeler all the way up to a tree stand and drop the hunter off right there at the tree stand. And part of that's due to time, because they're trying to drop numerous hunters off before daylight. But my conversations with them have also been about why they do that, and they think that it's better to do it that way. I'm not sold on that. I don't know if that's, and I'm not saying I know any more about them or I'm an expert and they're not, but I've not had much luck. I've tried that in the past, and I've not had much luck whenever I've driven very close to my stand. Maybe if you have like a really, really quiet electric vehicle that's really, really quiet and doesn't alert deer, maybe if you have something like that. But if it's motorized at all or runs off gasoline, I'm not sold on that. But it is interesting because people, and I even have friends here at home who do the DIY thing just like me, and they like to drive a four-wheeler, up close to their stand and hide it, and then get out and walk. And I don't like that. I like to have a silent approach, but it has to be a good entry and exit. Now, I will say this: if you don't have good entry and exit routes where you know you can get in and out of a spot without spooking deer, without deer crossing. And it's not just about spooking deer either, with your wind direction and walking through deer. It's also about your foot trail. You need to be able to get in and out of that stand and use routes that, and you're never going to be 100%, but at least try to find those spots where deer are less likely to cross your footpath, because that ground scent that you leave behind when you walk in and out is almost important as your wind scent whenever you're walking in and out. So it's tough, it's hard, but whenever you can find that spot, that perfect spot that has a good bedding area, has a good transition zone, good transition area with good trails and identified trails leading to food sources, and you find a spot that has good entry and exit access, you better hold on to that and really be able to identify that and see it when you see it, because that's rare to find a good spot that has all the pieces to the puzzle like that.
Yeah, one more thing on drop offs, and I've been beneficial. I hunted with Judd Cooney and Sherry Yarbrough in Iowa 1 year, and they drop off everybody. I mean, at the base of the stand, you climb the ladder out of the bed of the truck. I mean, everything down to the nth degree. And they say it a couple of things. One, reduces scent. Two, they're in there all the time, just like farmers, and everybody knows the deer will stand there and look at the farmer's tractor go by. And three, it makes people aware that, okay, here's how we're doing it. This is the quietest. We're getting you here the quickest, the easiest. You get all your gear. So
Now,
it makes it really easy. Yeah, and that's what they use. They don't use ATVs. They use trucks, and they take it right. I mean, literally to the base of the tree stand. You step out of the back of the truck with your gear, and they help you up with your gear, and all that, because typically all day sits. And then at night they come back and you stay in your stand until they're underneath your stand. Then you start unloading, and it works really well for them because they have a lot of people in there, and so you can't have people walking in. And I've been to places, and and I can walk to my stand without a flashlight, complete dark. Why? I'm not a ninja, but the trail is just like walking down, a path. I mean, once you know where it is, your feet, you just walk down the path, and there's enough light, you don't trip on the roots. And when I get to a place like that, I realize I'm screwed because they've been using the same path, the same entrance and exit, and every single deer in the area knows, what you're doing. I mean, there's absolutely no question. So, just food for thought. If you get in a situation like that, ask beforehand, how many stands you have, how do you rotate them? Do you hunt the same stands 3 days in a row, 5 days in a row, every day? You got to ask those questions, because when you hit a situation like that, and it gets scary that you can walk into a stand without a light.
Yeah. Well, that's it's that.
Unless it's your own land. Then that's a
Right.
completely different thing.
Right. Absolutely. For me, that's fluid. That's really situational as far as how much to hunt a stand. Um, I don't. I try not to ever think of anything as black and white when it comes to tactical approach. Now, legal things obviously black and white, but when it comes to just how to kill a deer and you're talking tactics, I try not to ever get black and white, especially on stuff like that. And it's just my personal preference, not that it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but it really all depends on the deer. If I think it's a good spot, good stand site that I can get in and out to, and hunt without being detected, if it's got good entry and exit, if I have a good trail in that is Not likely to have a lot of deer crossing and catching my scent trail, the scent from my walk in and out. If I check all the boxes, I'm much more likely to hunt that stand more often, and maybe even every day for a week straight if I think I'm getting, if I'm getting away with not spooking deer in any way while I'm hunting that stand, and even after I leave again, that scent trail from the walk in and out is just as important. Maybe not necessarily to while you're there, but a lot of people don't realize is you're spooking deer even after you leave sometimes because your scent's still there, both on the ground and in the area. So if I think I can get away with all that and I'm not really spooking many deer or spooking any deer, then I might hunt that stand every single day for a week and a half straight. I mean, obviously, I usually don't. I never have the time to do that, but just in a perfect world where all you do is hunt, I may hunt for a week and a half straight in the same spot if I think I can get away with it, if I have the right wind directions and I'm not spooking deer in any way, form, or fashion. But it also depends on the deer. Like, I mean, I never just hunt a spot. I never hunt one of my best spots just to hunt. I never even like my kill plots. If I don't have a mature buck that's using that spot now, and this goes back to scouting and intel. I run a lot of trail cameras and I do a lot of glassing from afar. And if I don't have any kind of proof that a deer is not only in that area but using that area in daylight, I won't even hunt it. I don't want to booger up my really good kill spot, and it's not just the kill plots, but just good stand sites in general. I've got some stand sites that have no kill plot at all around them, and they're some of my best stands. So it doesn't just have to be with kill plots, but just good stands in general. I don't hunt those spots unless I have some kind of evidence that a deer is actually coming through there in daylight. A deer that I want to target. Um, in those times where I don't necessarily know that I have a good opportunity at killing a big buck, I'll hunt one of my lesser stands, one of my stands that aren't as good. Uh, uh, that maybe it's a little further from the bedding areas, maybe it's a little closer to the food sources, whatever. But I never really go into those good stands until I know um, that I have high odds of killing a deer. And for on that point, I'm pretty sure last year I killed the buck I killed whenever I moved in because I knew he was in there in daylight. I had preseason data, intel, trail cam pictures, scouting from afar. I'm pretty sure I killed him the second time I was in there. Might have been the third, but I'm pretty sure it was the second time I set that spot. The year before that, I killed the buck in that same kill plot. I think it was probably on my second or third sit. And then the year before that, in the same kill plot, I killed my buck in the same the last 3 years, I killed my buck in the same location. I think I killed him on the third day. So, um, and those might not have been contiguous sits. I'm not saying that I necessarily hunted those spots 2 or 3 days in a row to kill that deer because I don't necessarily do that either. I want to make sure it has a high odds day before I go in there. I want to make sure I think I have all the pieces of the puzzle for that deer, not only to be there in daylight, but to want to move in daylight before I move in. And so, yeah, I mean, as far as how often I hunt a stand, your best odds of killing that deer is the first time you're in there. And that has been the case for me, just in not the last 3 years, but just in general and throughout my entire hunting career, so to speak. Since I started hunting when I was a little kid, there have been many occasions where I killed the buck that I killed or killed the buck that I was after, whether I knew about him or not beforehand. Um, there have been many occasions where I killed that deer the first time I was in there, and that's your best odds. That's your best chance to kill that deer because based on what research I've looked at, every time you go in there after that depends on the situation, but just in general, a lot of the research shows your chances of killing that deer every time you go in there after that keep dropping by 50%. Basically, your chances of killing him today, if it's a 100% chance, tomorrow if you go in there, it's going to be a 50% chance. The next day after that, it's going to be a 25% chance. The next day, it's going to be a 12.5% chance. And that may not be the case in every single situation, especially if you have a really good spot where you have checked all the boxes and you have really good good entry and exit routes where you don't spook deer. If you have, if you're walking in and out there, no deer is catching your ground scent. If you make sure you have really good wind directions and no deer smells you while you're there or after you leave, if you checked all those boxes, obviously your chances aren't going to drop by 50% every time you go in there. But just in general, a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this too. I don't always, I'm not as disciplined as I always need to be, and sometimes I might accidentally, not necessarily accidentally, but I might unwisely hunt a spot that I shouldn't just because I'm trying to get in there and hunt that deer, and I want to hunt that deer, and that's good and that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But if you really want to target those the big mature deer, that's a big mistake, and I'm just as guilty as the next guy. So that research shows that if you're not mindful of that, if you're not mindful of not spooking deer, you really hurt your chances each time you go in there. So if you're in a spot that's not very good, it doesn't check all the boxes, yeah, hunting day after day or hunting numerous days throughout the week, that's going to hurt your chances and do bad for you. So it's so situational in my opinion. It's so fluid, but no two situations are the same. No two situations are alike. You just got to be able to, and I know you get it, and most all our listeners out there, I'm sure they get it too. But you got to be able to see a situation and analyze it and react accordingly. So I guess if some stands you might only want to hunt that once a week, once every 2 weeks. Some stands you can probably get away hunting 7 days a week. I don't know. It's so situational.
And that's a good point because I know people that literally hunt 3 days a year, and then they've been on my show. And one is a guy, Jeff Helmers from West Salem, Trumpeldor County, Wisconsin. He's got 40 acres. He's been working that land a long time, a real long time. So he's got like 2 or 3 stands set up. He knows where everybody is, and he hunts it at max 3 days. That's all he hunts, and all the work he does on that, the food plots and everything. But in 3 days, he's going to kill the buck he's after, or he doesn't. That because every day after those 3 days are gone, it diminishes and diminishes and diminishes, and typically he doesn't see that buck again.
Yeah.
And and that's just the way it is. And when you start focusing on one buck, the first time's the best time. There's no question about it. And that's why everything has to be right. And sometimes, and you mentioned it before earlier, you said, to go hunting, just to go hunting. If you're going to do that, go on a big food plot or, or corn or beans or something where you're going to see 20 deer, 10 deer, 5, whatever's in your herd. They're going to come out and you're going to have a nice evening or a nice morning and you're going to see a lot of deer. Maybe Mr. Wonderful is going to show up, but you're there not really focusing on killing, a deer on your hit list. He may show up, but you're still hunting, and you're still out there, as opposed to zeroing in, as we've been talking for the past hour, zeroing in on a buck and saying, okay, how's the best way to get this buck down on the ground? And there's a huge difference in that. And there's nothing wrong with taking a kid and putting him on a double set stand over a field and watching the does pour out and having fun and the fawn's playing and all that. That's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That really is.
Right. And hunting is different, is many different things to many different people. And not everybody likes to go after big deer, and that's okay. For me personally, the primary reason for hunting is not big deer. The primary reason that I hunt is because I love to eat wild game. I love to eat wild game. I love to eat deer meat. Love to eat turkey meat. Love to eat all the small game. Love to eat fish. That's the primary reason for me, the primary trigger for doing what I do. But I do like hunting big deer. I love that challenge. I love that. I love the chess match, as the common cliche goes. And it really is a chess match. You make a move, he makes a move. You make a move, he makes a move, and whoever makes the wrong move first loses. But yeah, when it comes to that, I like to save my buck tags for a big deer like that. And if I don't cross paths with a deer that I want to shoot, I don't shoot a buck. I was fortunate to kill a good buck in Kentucky last year, but I ate a buck tag up in Ohio because I did not see the deer I was after. It's kind of funny. We've got a small. My father and I, we share a lease up in Ohio. It's 40 acres, very inexpensive lease. We got it for a very, very good price on that lease. I'm not big on leases, but it's tough to find good spots these days without leasing ground. I still get permission. Door knocking still works, and we still hunt public ground. But we came across this small 40 acres, and it was just too good to pass up because it was such a good area. It was set up not perfect, but really well for hunting. And last year, my dad, he killed a good 140-inch 10-pointer. Well, he's actually 11-pointer. I had a small G5 on one side. But I did not kill one last year. I ate my Ohio tag last season. I got a nice 8-point the year before, but last season I ate a tag because I did not see the deer I was wanting to see. There was a big 175-inch deer and a big 195-inch deer that were in the area, and I narrowly missed seeing one of them, the 175-inch deer. I hunted that deer for 3 days in a row because I had good entry and exit, and he come in on the fourth day. I didn't hunt that day, so the day after I hunted him, he showed up. Maybe he knew I wasn't there. I don't know, but I passed up on some good bucks, some 120, 130-inch deer because I was waiting on Mr. Big. But and that's part of it. That's part of the fun. But it's one of those things where going out and setting over a big area, a big ag field or big food plot, like you said, and just seeing deer or shooting a doe or shooting a young buck if you like shooting young bucks, or just going out there and hunting with somebody in a double stand. That's just as much hunting as going after a big deer, and it's just as fun in a lot of ways. And hunting is hunting, and just being able to be out there. I love to go hunting. So if I don't necessarily have a deer that I think I have a good chance of killing in one of my high odds, good stand sites, I still go. I still go if I am not working and I'm able to. But I just make sure I don't hunt those high odds stands until I think I have a really, really good shot of killing one of those big deer that I'm after.
And with that, how do people get a hold of you? They want to touch base with you. They want to get a hold of Realtree. Tell us the social media and all that good stuff.
Yeah, you can go check out everything we do personally. The team that I work with on Realtree.com. There's a team of 6 of us. We all have different jobs on there, but we all share the load. But if you want to see any kind of deer hunting content or bow hunting, I take care of the deer hunting, the bow hunting, the big game hunting, and the food plot and land management nests. Just go to Realtree.com, go up to the top, click on hunting, and then you'll see all those nests. You can click on those nests, or you can go to the Brow Tines and Backstraps deer blog that's on Realtree.com. I write that blog. You can check out all the content that we're doing. We have everything from short blogs, short micro features that are only a couple 100, 300 words, all the way up to full-fledged mega features that are tens of thousands of words. So you can go out and check out all the content we've got. We've got a lot of good video content up on Realtree.com as well if you like checking out the video content. But you can also go to the Realtree Outdoors YouTube page, check out all our videos there. You can go to Realtree Outdoors Facebook page, and if you want to follow that page, everything that we put out on Realtree.com goes to our Realtree Outdoors Facebook page on a schedule. So once it hits Realtree.com, it gets scheduled for Realtree Outdoors Facebook. So if you just want to get regular notifications, you can do it that way. The best way to get regular notifications is to subscribe to the nest. Like if you are a diehard bow hunter, if you're a diehard deer hunter, if you're just a diehard land management person, you can actually go to those specific nests on Realtree.com, scroll to the bottom of that nest, and you can actually put in your email address, and it will send you regular updates on the content that hits those nests. So there's a lot of different ways to get in touch with us. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can. If you have any questions or just want to talk deer hunting, you can check me out at Josh_Honeycutt@yahoo.com. That's my email address. Feel free to reach out there. That's cool. But lots of ways to get in touch with us, and feel free to do so because we enjoy the interaction.
And with that, Josh, thank you so much for spending some time. And we always have good conversations. I love talking with you because, you've been there, you can share it well, and it's just a joy to have you on the show.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.